Okay, now a recurring theme in these questions is that we need to know our maths words, and we've got a number of maths words here to describe types of angles. An acute angle, which is less than 90 degrees. A right angle, which is exactly 90 degrees. An obtuse angle, which is greater than 90, but also less than 180. We have our straight line, which is exactly 180, and we have the angle that we have here, which is our reflex angle. If you want to practice this a little bit more, then we've got a century nugget just for this, 26.03. Okay, question 2. Now let's take the fear out of dealing with these decimals. Now there are a couple of underpinning nuggets on century that we did the other day that I'd quite like you to just remind yourself of if needs be, because they're about multiplying and dividing by 10, 100 and 1,000 and powers of 10 like that. And the way we deal with these decimals is going to involve some multiplying and dividing by 10. So we need to make sure that we've got that skill sorted out entirely. Because what I want to do is I want to try and get rid of these decimal points. Okay, so for each of these numbers, what do I need to do to get rid of the decimal points? Well, I need to move this 8 one place to the left, so that's multiplying by 10, and likewise I need to move these digits here one place to the left, so that's also multiplying by 10. So I'm going to multiply by 10 twice, so that's the same as multiplying by 100, and that leaves me with 8 times 12, which we can do, which is 96. So I now need to reverse this process here, and I'm going to now do the inverse operation of multiplying by 100, which is to divide by 100. So I now need to do 96 divided by 100, and hopefully, if we've remembered those nuggets that I asked you to just have a look at there, 2.11 and 2.12. The way that I need to do that is to move these digits 2 places along. So 1, 2. So my 6 is here. My 9, 1, 2. So that's there. So getting my placeholder and decimal point in, my answer is 0.96. So let's just have a quick reminder of what those steps were. Get rid of decimals by multiplying by 10, 100 or so on. Do the multiplication. and then we reverse step 1. Okay, and if you want a little bit of practice on that, then the century nugget 6.06 will be lovely for you. But if you can do this skill up here, which is multiplying and dividing by 10, 100 and 1000, then we can take away the fear of that decimal multiplication for you. Okay, good luck with that. Okay, now I've got questions 3 and 4 here together because they are so similar. And I'm going to talk about question 3, which is this one here, and only talk briefly about question 4 because the steps are very similar. Now, there are some general principles here, and I want us to think about what's actually going on in this expression here. And I'm going to do that by using what's called a function machine. So I need you just to think about your BIDMAS here for order of operations, and which bit of this expression would we do first? Well, we'd do the bracket, so we're going to do the 4x plus 1. Which bit of that bracket are we going to do first? We're going to do the 4 times x because it's multiplication, which is going to become our division and multiplication come before our adding and subtracting. So my number x comes in here, and the next thing I do is I multiply by 4 because that's the multiplication that I'm going to do first. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 to that. So that's my bracket dealt with. I multiplied by 4 and then I added 1. I've now got this 2 outside the bracket, and that's a 2 times. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by my answer, which is 2. And at the end of that process, out has come the answer 18. Now, that's all very well, but what I've been asked to do is I've been asked to solve for x, which means that I need to find out what this x is. And I'm going to do this by putting this machine into reverse. So at this step here, what's the inverse operation? So these are inverse operations. I'm going to divide by 2. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. The inverse operation of adding 1 is to take 1 away. So 9 take away 1 is 8. The inverse operation of multiplying by 4 is to divide by 4. So out at the end of my machine comes the answer 2. And let's check that. 4 2s are 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. So we can see that that is the correct answer. And we could go through a similar process with question 4. So that's the general principles of what's going on. Now, that's not really how we write our algebraic manipulation. So I'm now going to write this going through the steps of the algebraic manipulation. But the machine here shows us the general principles. And what students tend to struggle with is that they don't know which bit of this equation to start dealing with first. And it's the function machine that tells us what to do first because we are reversing our BIDMAS process. Okay, so now that this is an equation, because it has an equal sign, what this means is that for the left-hand side to equal the right-hand side, anything I do to this left-hand side, I have to do to the right-hand side to make sure that they are equal. So the first thing I'm going to do is to divide both sides by 2. which is this bit here. So dividing the left-hand side by 2 means that I now only have 4x plus 1. Dividing 18 by 2 is 9. The next thing I'm going to do, I've got this stray plus 1 here, so I want to take that away, which leaves me only with 4x. I took 1 away from this side, and this is the takeaway 1 that was going on here. 9 take away 1 is 8. I now know that 4 of my x's equals 8. So how do I find what 1 of something is? I divide by 4. So x equals, I've got to do the same thing to the right hand side. X is 2. And that was that step there. Hopefully this number machine here is showing you why we do the algebraic steps in the order that we do them. So having done this one, it's relatively straightforward to now do question 4, and we will see where the change in our steps happens. Hopefully this won't be an enormous surprise to you now. First thing we're going to do is divide both sides by 2. 4x minus 1 is 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, it's at this step here that things are going to be a little bit different, because I had a plus 1 here and I dealt with that by taking it away. I've got a minus 1 here and I'm going to deal with that by the inverse operation of subtracting, which is adding, and I'm going to add 1 to both sides. 4x is 10. If 4 of something is 10, then I'm going to find one of them by dividing by 4. X is 10 divided by 4, which is 2.5. Okay, now I've taken a bit longer on that than you might have expected, but that was because I really wanted to show you the process behind solving equations and why we do things in the order that we do. Now, this is a long process, long learning process in maths. Now, you don't have to do all of these nuggets, but you might want to. If you start getting into it, you'd be surprised at how well you can do here. The solving equations nuggets start at 19.01, so please have a look at that one at least, and work your way down through some of these and see how you get on. Okay, well, question 5, we're really in the same position as we were in question 1, that we need to know what our words mean. If we don't know what this word reciprocal means, then we're not going to be able to answer this question. Okay, now very simply, the reciprocal of a fraction like this is, we just turn it upside down, is 3 over 2. And it's called a reciprocal because if we take the reciprocal of our reciprocal and turn it upside down, we get to back to where we started. So let's think how we're going to do the question that we've got in front of us, which is the reciprocal of 4. Well, let's turn 4 into a fraction. 4 is 4 divided by 1. So our reciprocal of 4 divided by 1 is a quarter. And there we are. That is our answer. Let me explain a little bit about the algebra here, in that our reciprocal of a number x is x to the power negative 1. And you'll see that you've got a button on your calculator to do just that. So let's have a think about how this reciprocal works. If we take the reciprocal of our reciprocal, so if we take x to the power negative 1 to the power negative 1, then if we remember our laws of dealing with indices, we would multiply those two powers together. So negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So this reciprocal of the reciprocal must be x to the power 1, which we write as x. So we get back to where we started. So that's why the reciprocal is to the power negative 1, and that's just taking us through the index algebra to see why the reciprocal of the reciprocal is the number that we first started with, and indeed why it's called the reciprocal. Okay, well, that's the end of today's solutions. I hope those have been helpful to you. Have a go at today's 5 a day. Keep up your practice, and if you've got any questions, please ask your maths teacher.